When we talk about allergies, allergies are a symptom. There's something aggravating the immune system. Now, let's jump into 3 herbs. Now, these herbs are very common. You might have heard about them before, but you might not be using them this way. I'd love to hear from you, though. Let me know in the comments, have you used herbal teas? Teas like as what you drink for yourself, right? Have you ever used herbal teas with your pets? Just let me know. I see Deborah and Joni. I see a few of our community that's in our Blueprint program. Welcome, welcome. I know you've heard me talk about teas because I love tea. Anyone here use teas with their pets? If you're not a tea drinker, this might be the reason to start drinking tea for yourself. And then we can use this safely with our pets, which is really neat. I see, okay, no, we haven't yet. Great, glad you're here. Perfect, Yvonne and Kim, perfect. This is a great, easy thing. Who here has tea, like tea bags or loose leaf tea in your pantry? Anyone? Does anyone have like tea in your pantry? So no, okay, this is like a newer concept, but Kim, you love tea. Perfect. Okay. So you may actually have some of these in your pantry. I always recommend when we are using herbs, so teas are herbs, right? Dried herbs. We want to look for your organic, right? We don't want things to be sprayed. If you can use loose leaf teas, fantastic. Companies that I love using are going to be things like Star West Botanicals, Mountain Rose Herbs. Those are companies that are in the States. But there's plenty of other great companies out there. You can go to like a local tea shop if you have that. If they're, ask about sourcing, but look for that organic just to reduce the amount of chemicals that we're putting into our pets, especially if you are here for allergy-like symptoms. We don't want to be increasing inflammation in there. So that's key. And the teas I'm going to be talking about today are right? So we don't have to worry about that for our pets and too much caffeine and things like that. Now, let's talk about one of my favorite ones that isn't used enough. And this is calendula. And who here's heard of calendula? It's, other terms would be called marigold. This is where if we have a hot spot, we have irritation, we have inflamed red skin, this is a great one to use topically. So when we're talking about teas, let's take a step back before I dive into the energetics of some of these herbs that we can use. So literally we're taking that tea bag or loose leaf tea and we're brewing a cup of tea. And there can be this is more of like an infusion. So there's different ways that we can process herbs. We can use poultices topically where we're taking that herb itself and we're putting it in water and then sticking it on the skin, and then we're putting a bandage around it and allowing it to sit there and soothe and heal the skin. There's also tinctures where a lot of times you'll see things. I see my good friends from Animal Essentials. I think you're still here on Instagram. They do a lot of glycerin tinctures. So there's different ways to process the herbs that you'll see, whether it's in a glycerin tincture, whether it's in an alcohol extract. It'll all depend on the herb. But we're making it super simple today because I love simple and I love being able to use things that are probably in your pantry or that you can easily access. So with the tea, we're literally creating an infusion, and we can make a weaker infusion or we can make a stronger infusion. And it's going to come down to the amounts of the tea that we're using, of the herb. So either a weak infusion is going to be literally a half an ounce of the herbs or 15 grams of the herbs per liter of water. Now you don't have to get crazy with like, oh my gosh, I have to measure this. Literally, you are not going to create harm for your pet. So just keep that in mind. These are all very, very safe. And then with a weak infusion, when we're using the leaves of the herb, we're going to actually allow it to sit there and infuse. So hot water or boil water, if you have a kettle, however you use it to boil, let those leaves sit there for an hour. And then your flowers, so we're going to be talking about chamomile. We're using the flowers for this. It's literally going to sit there for 30 minutes. And then if you're using crushed seeds from the plant, we're going to be 15 minutes, bark and roots. We're not talking about that today, but 4 hours. So each component and part of the plant, we infuse for a different period and amount of time to extract the beauty out of it, extract the medicine from that plant. Now, a standard infusion, this is typically what most people will do. We're taking an ounce of the dried herb per quart of water. Once again, and this is going to make a bigger amount, so that way you can use it throughout the day, because we're probably going to be, you're here because of allergies. So if there's a hot spot, it's not a one and done. we want to repeat that throughout the day until that skin is less red, it's less irritated. So this is a safe way to utilize these topically on the skin. And your standard infusion, you're usually going to do it for about 30 to 60 minutes. So if we're using it orally, we're going to talk more about topically, but if we're using it orally, so we're either mixing it in the food, or a lot of times these animals will actually like lick it up and drink the type of tea. Sometimes the longer infusion time can make things more bitter. So like with chamomile, it can taste more bitter, and then your dog, or especially cats, might not like the food or things like that. So you can always do it for a shorter period of time with that infusion time. Once again, have fun with it. This is super easy, super safe, and super simple, right? It's all about keeping it nice and simple so you can actually take the action and get the results. So let's go back to calendula. Now, calendula, we're going to talk about like healing topically. So for hot spots, irritations, you can even use these on wounds and things like that. Calendula is actually going to be, so it's very cooling energetically. And it's drying. And so we can use it. It's like an astringent. It's going to dry up damp tissue. So when we think about those oozy, wet, hot spots, calendula is a great tea to grab to use topically. And this is where essentially you brew that cup of tea for however long you want to, right? Maybe 30 to 60 minutes, or if we want to use a higher concentration of herb, you can make a stronger infusion. And then you literally get a washcloth or a cloth and you soak it, and you can put it topically on that area. Now, what's really nice with calendula too, so if you have a pet that has a lot of GI issues or irritation, we're worried about leaky gut that's creating those hot spots, this can also be used internally too. So it's really good for diarrhea and soothing the gut lining and that inflammation. So it's nice and cooling. So for pets that also have diarrhea or leaky gut, or we're worried that there's, a food sensitivity that's aggravating that immune system, calendula is really helpful to counteract that and start healing those tissues. So this is where, if we have a lot of excess moisture or dampness, skin irritations, calendula is a really, really great one. Now, it's a little bit slightly bitter, slightly like kind of sweet. And this is where it's going to support the cleansing and the digestion properties of this herb. Now, in terms of the other energetic actions of calendula, it's uplifting. I've actually taken this myself. It doesn't taste bad. I've used it topically if I have like a rash or something like that. It's very soothing. I've used it for like eyes if I have any irritation, conjunctivitis. So it can be used for multiple things, but especially if you have a damp, hot pet, damp inflammation, wet, oozy, this is a great one to use. And one of the other ways that you can use this, we talk a lot about foot baths. So if we have, red, irritated, sore paws, we talk a lot about like Epsom salt baths, but this would be a great way to have your pet stand in a calendula tea bath. So you're essentially brewing a larger portion of the tea, you're using more of the herbs, and then you're putting it in a little container where your pet will stand in it. So if we can get them to stand for 10 minutes and then we dry their feet, we're using the calendula to help soothe and calm those irritated tissues. So calendula, calendula, calendula. So this is really, really helpful. And it's just one of many things that we can use for hot spots. So keep that in mind. Like, this is not the end all be all. It's just another alternative and solution to help you calm down those irritated, itchy skin and help soothe. Now let's talk about another herb that I absolutely love, this herb. And the reason why is that a lot of times when your pet is itchy, they are having issues with they get anxious, right? They get irritated, being itchy and hot and inflamed, you just don't feel good, right? Who here, do you agree? Have you ever seen your pet just get more agitated? And this is where we can tap into the power of chamomile. So who here have you used chamomile with your pets? Maybe you drink the tea yourself at night to help relax and help you sleep. We talked a lot about it a couple weeks ago, or was it last week, about emotional health. Chamomile is a powerhouse herb because, herbs are powerhouses, but I love chamomile because it's going to help alleviate allergies. It's combating inflammation, but it's also a nervine. So it has anti-anxiety properties too, just to calm down that nervous system. So we're working on the inflammation. It has antihistamine properties too. So we know when your pet gets itchy, they get red. This is where those mast cells are releasing a lot of histamine, and that's what creates that redness and that itchiness, is all this excess histamine that's going on in the body. So if we can use herbs and plants that are going to decrease histamine, I have another great one too that's not used enough or talked about enough, but this is where we can use those to help calm things down. And it's working on different parts of the body. It's also working on the gut. It helps with like spasms. So if there's a lot of like gut health issues too, these herbs can work in multiple ways. That's the power of the synergistic properties of using herbs, using herbal medicine. So in terms of chamomile, once again, we can use this topically. And so you can brew a cup of chamomile tea, and we can actually use it as a rinse to help soothe and calm down irritated, inflamed skin. So you can apply it to the skin using a cloth or even cotton balls, where you're squeezing. A washcloth works just fine too. And I love it. I see, like, thank you. I think that's Michelle, I'm going to guess. My anxious girl gets it every day. I recommend chamomile for so many pets and patients that I work with. And this is where, you can actually add it to the bath water too. I have some amazing clients that do Epsom salt baths with their like itchy pets. You can add chamomile in. You can add calendula in. This is where it's really, really helpful. I love that. I use chamomile and calendula on my dogs often, especially on wounds. Thank you for sharing summits with Sandy. Topically, right? We got to heal internally, but we can use things externally, topically, to help improve and speed up that healing process. And so definitely we can also use this internally. Once again, you can brew a cup of tea, remove the tea bag and the herbs, and then you can put it into their food. And a lot of pets, I have patients that will just drink it too, more so like dogs. But it's really, really helpful in terms of soothing and calming and energetically. And then also to keeping in mind that it's a cooling herb also. It's relaxing. So we're calming down that excess nervous system, that sympathetic stress response, that agitation that can come from being overheated, hot, inflamed, not feeling good. Can be definitely helpful. And Molly, a great question. Can I use chamomile essential oil? We're not going to talk about essential oils. I have other topics on essential oils and how you can use them safely. You always want to dilute it. And you can definitely use essential oils. Essential oils are the concentrated form of that herb. So less is better when we're using essential oils. The brand is very important. The looking for the transparency of the company. Are they doing testing to make sure that we don't have additional chemicals and things like that? That's really, really important. There's a lot of really bad essential oil brands, which has like ruined the power of essential oils for pets. But I use essential oils for both dogs and cats. So definitely you can also utilize essential oils. Keep in mind, it's going to be used very differently than what we're talking about for teas, but less is more. Dilution is key and keeping them safe. So definitely check out your chamomile. Once again, you can use this multiple times throughout the day. So if you're using it topically or in a spray, or if you're using it, internally with the food, you could give that twice a day, but you can use it up to 3 times a day if you need to. And usually we're using it until we see symptom resolution. So you might need to use it for there's a lot of studies that show resolution of skin issues when we're at 10, 14 days. Keep in mind, we need to calm down what's causing that skin issue, remove that if there's an irritant, because obviously we can't expect resolution if we're not removing the thing that is creating the problem. So that's really, really important. And in terms of also, so that's chamomile. Let's talk about the next herb, because this one is just amazing. I love it. So this is going to be, who here has heard of nettles? Anyone? Nettles? Nettles. This is an amazing herb. So this is where we're going to be talking about nettle leaf. So remember, there's different parts of the plant and they're going to have different medicinal properties. So specifically for skin health and allergies, we're going to be using the leaf. So nettle leaf is what we'll be using. Now, this is really nourishing herb. It's really rich in things like calcium and other vitamins and minerals. And we know with skin health issues, a lot of times we're deficient in a lot of vitamins and minerals. Also, too, this is where diet is really, really important. We know that 30% of the coat, the fur, comes like the protein, 30% of protein your pet is taking in will actually go to the coat, the quality of the coat. So if you were thinking like, okay, I'm feeding like a processed food diet like kibble, that's going to be 40 to 60% carbohydrates. It's going to be lower protein. And a lot of times too, we're using synthetic vitamins and minerals in the processing of that food to, try to balance it. And your pet might be deficient in things like zinc also. So we have to look at the nutritional component too, and how the skin is made up and the things that it needs. And nettles is really helpful at providing additional nutrients and support there. So it's a really good one if you're worried, or this can be used internally, right, for the nutrient status. The other big thing too is that it has anti-inflammatory properties, as the other two herbs do too, but it also has antihistamine properties. And so that's where, so the anti-allergy, where we have a lot of histamine production from those mast cells, and there's studies that show how nettles will actually work to like block the release of histamine. And so for, people too, if you're like sneezing, you're itching a lot, nettle tea is a really, really great option. Yes, and nettle is great for seeing your pets. There's a lot of anti-inflammatory, osteoarthritis, providing those additional nutrients. It is also very neutral energetically, but very nourishing. Now, one of the other things that it can be used for is for pets that have like anemia, where their red blood cell count is down. It can actually help support that and red blood cell production, which is fantastic. And the thing is that once again, this can be used multiple times a day topically. We can put it in the food. There's different forms of nettle. If you're using like the nettle seed, sometimes it can be a diuretic. Your pet might pee a little bit more. So you want to look for like the leaf version. But it's really rich in those vitamins to really, really help. Now, in terms of the anti-inflammatory properties, so we're using it for like the hair also. We can use nettle to promote, I think I saw a question on hair growth. That can be combined with rosemary. I saw a question about that. So if we have alopecia, or we have hair loss, we need to support that, but figure out why. Remember, root cause, key, ask that question, why? Really, really important. I love it, Andrea. I use nettles for seasonal allergies with my labs. We start using it before we see any symptoms and use it throughout the allergy season. So perfect. This is where you can use herbs as a preventative. The other thing too, Dale, I love that you mentioned this. I've used it in my cooking for my dogs. So you can use these plants. Like these nettles is so healthy and nutritious. Like use it in the food. You can use it as a superfood topper. You don't need a ton of herbs because they're so highly concentrated, which is really, really helpful. So this is where there's lots of research studies too with your nettles, and for all of these. So if you're like concerned or you're worried or you want to learn more, this is where go to PubMed and you can type in chamomile, you can type in nettles, you can type in calendula, and you'll get a lot of information. And that's where too, sharing these resources with your veterinarian to help show them like these things, these natural things can work. And we can move away from using things like Apoquel, Cytopoint injections. So that was kind of a quick overview of just 3 top herbs, excuse me, that I love using in tea form to really show you, like, start using, excuse me, start using herbs in your life if you're not already. Teas are the easiest. If you're feeling stressed, you're feeling need to reduce inflammation and you have allergies too, brew a cup for yourself. And if you are, I would love to see the photo of you sharing and enjoying tea with your pets. So you can always tag me in the photos if you're on Instagram. Send them to us in an email. I love seeing how you're using those herbs to help support your pets' natural health and help their vibrancy, reduce the amount of conventional drugs that we don't need. If you're feeling overwhelmed, we have our Blueprint program, which is a lifetime program where we offer mentorship and support and help educate you on how to find those root causes that might be keeping you stuck. So feel free to set up an interview. It is an application-only program to make sure that it is the best fit for what you're looking for with your pets. So definitely check out some of the additional resources that we have too at thenaturalpetdoctor.com. And then